Is it really true that we are actually losing so many soldiers? And if so, what are the factors?
Unlike some armies in our neighborhood whose officers are never seen on the post. And you see, they have never won a war. They had 93,000 surrenders in Bangladesh. They lost Kargil. So if the officers are not leading, the husher yahi hoga. But the weapon systems spread at the target area because of inherent characteristics of the weapon system, something called danger area. The danger area is 150 meters, but your own troops are at 50 meters from the target area. So you cannot, in spite of that weapon system being available to you, having fixed the location of the target, you cannot use a particular weapon system because of inherent characteristics of that weapon system. You can miss a man walking in front of you if you are not careful. The finest of the weapon systems, but you cannot use it because the target profile, vicinity of foreign troops, and the characteristics or limitations of that particular weapon system.
Why do we lose so many soldiers during operations? And is it really true that we are actually losing so many soldiers? And if so, what are the factors?
Counter-terrorism operations or counter-insurgency operations, especially in difficult terrain, in high altitude, as also in the built-up areas, is a very specialized operation and very complex operations. Because every time the soldier has to fight, a soldier has to go out to neutralize the terrorist who may be hiding in a village or who may be in a jungle. So both these places of hiding have their own characteristics and the issues and complexities involved in carrying out the operation. Let's say, take for example, the built-up area first. Before that, I'd like to tell you as to how the intelligence or the information about a likely terrorist comes. There are 2 or 3 ways information comes. One is you have the technical intelligence. That means you have intercepted some message, you have got his location, which invariably is not correct to the last meter. So you get a location also or a fix also, technically I'm saying now. Then it also might be in a radius of about 8, 10, 15, 20, 50, or even 100 meters. So in that 50 to 100 meters, there may be a cluster of 7 to 8 houses. So collateral damage or the zero collateral damage is the first priority for the soldier. Terrorist who has picked up a weapon has to die one day. But in the exuberance, we do not want any civilian casualty or any loss of property, private or public. Hence, that puts a lot of restrictions on the way operations are carried out. Second is the information might come through a human being, that is a civilian source. He will tell you the terrorist, I have seen that terrorists entering in Mr. A's house or Mr. B's house. Now, as we all are aware, the houses in the built-up area are next to each other. One can jump from one house to the other. And the moment there is information of security forces approaching, the terrorist can change his hideout, he can change his house, he can change his location. There again, after you have done the inner cordon and the outer cordon, it is of utmost importance to identify where the terrorist is and to fix it. And then only start the operation. Otherwise, the information which came to you 30 minutes ago or 1 hour ago may have now got changed. Maybe because the terrorist on his own has been shifting houses, or somehow they have come to know that security forces are now cordoning the area, and he would definitely change the location. Therefore, to say that we can go all guns blazing in all the situations is not true. So every time when the terrorist and counter-terrorist operations are being carried out in the built-up area, security forces have to move with stealth. Now, this is the battle of the first bust, as I always say. The terrorist who is hiding and who knows the security forces are cordoning him or likely to cordon him is on the lookout from the same house where he is, or the lookout man may be in a different house or in a different building altogether. So when we are approaching the target, the soldiers may be exposing themselves to someone who is as a lookout man or shifted to a new house. So they may be exposing their rear side, their side, So the first burst, if the terrorist fires, the chances of casualty are there. Hence, after the first burst, once the first burst has been observed, thereafter, the terrorist has to die, because then the terrorist location has been fixed and the operation can continue. So this is where maximum casualties in counter-terrorist operations happen, in the built-up area during the first burst. Even Major Vibhuti Dhondiyal, if you remember correctly, and the 3 other soldiers, after the Pulwama incident, when we killed the Kamran alias Ghazi within 100 hours in village Pinglam, Major Vibhuti Dhondiyal and his team came under fire within the first 15 minutes of the operation being launched. And thereafterwards, the operation carried on for next 36 hours. So first burst is most important, and collateral damage avoidance is the first priority for the security forces. Now, coming to the jungle areas. When terrorists are hiding in jungle areas, they're basically wanting to stay away from the built-up area, because in the built-up area, they feel the information can flow. There, someone can leak their location. So they would only come to built-up area for their sustenance, that means rations or cooked food. Otherwise, they stay something called hideouts in jungle. Now, hideouts are also different types. One is a proper underground built-up hideout with a proper cover on top and mud on top and properly camouflaged. Gone are those days. Those days were the days when I was a captain or major in North Kashmir, where you had the built-up hideouts, where a carpenter had made a hideout in the jungle. It was as good as a living room. Nowadays, the hideouts are nothing but in an overhang of a rock face. Just put a polythene sheet to avoid the sun and the rain, and they can shift this hideout probably every 6 hours or every day. So when a civilian goes to the jungles, or he sees this hideout, or he's an OGW who has gone to supply rations, once he comes back, when he gives the information about this particular hideout, by the time the security forces launch the operation, this hideout may well have shifted. Maybe 50 yards, 100 yards, 200 yards, or as much as even half a kilometer. So it is very important to go and search that place, fix that hideout again, and then engage it with the most appropriate weapon system. A lot of people very genuinely ask the question, sir, why do we have to physically go and contact the hideout? If we know where the hideout is, why don't we use some precision weapons or some lethal weapons, long-range weapons, or some aerial weapons like drones and other things before we go and physically contact? So here I would like to amplify, this is a very genuine doubt and a concern for the citizens about the safety of one's soldiers and losing lives of one's soldiers is very well understood. And they have a genuine concern. However, when the information comes, when a civilian comes to you, he does not come with the lat long of the location of the hideout. He cannot even show you the hideout on the map because he has no idea how a map is read. He would come to you with an information which may well sound like this. साहब वहाँ जंगल में नाले के पास बड़े पत्थर के पीछे करीब 50-60 मीटर आगे जाके एक चश्मा है. उस चश्मे से करीब 200 मीटर 5 मिनट लगते हैं सब चढ़ने में, और वहां पे जाके 3 बड़े पेड़ हैं, उसके पीछे हाइड आउट है. कितनी दूर है बेटा वो? सब यहाँ से 5 से 6-7 घंटे लगेंगे चढ़ाई में. Now this is the information. You will take 5 to 6 to 7 hours to climb in the jungle and reach that location. Then you have to look for that nala, you have to look for that spring, you have to look for that rock face, you have to look for the cluster of trees. And then you have to go around, search, see, observe. And if the fire is drawn, then you are sure that this is where the hideout is. If you had to give me location of your office, you will just drop me a drop pin on the GPS. I will put that on my mobile, I'll reach your desk. But unfortunately, this is not how the location of the hideout is shared with the security forces. So, say for example, the Kokernag operation. When the commanding officer got the intelligence and he thought that intelligence is real and worth it, he himself decided to lead that operation. Now, here I would like to bring in one more aspect of Indian Army. Indian Army ethos is the officers lead from the front. As I've also mentioned in my book, Kitne Ghazi Aaye, Kitne Ghazi Gaye, day one of my joining the unit in January of 1984 in Sikkim, while it was snowing, first day in the battalion, what lesson did I learn? My Subedar Major walked up to me and told me, Saab, officer hamesha aage. Now, if this is the type of DNA, if this is the type of ethos, if this is the type of culture Indian Army officers have, then when the intelligence is very good, the officer would lead himself. Young officers will always lead the operations. So in Kokarnag, the commanding officer realized the intelligence is good. He led the operation. He, along with the company commander and the DSP of the Jammu Kashmir Police, walked for 7 hours in that jungle. They reached that hideout where the location was. So good was the intelligence. It was a pure intelligence-based operation. They could walk 7 hours and reach the location. Unfortunately, the point I made about the first burst hit the command elements because probably the terrorists were hiding and they were static. Own forces or security forces are moving. And when you move in the jungle, like it or not, there is some sort of a noise which is made because you're moving in a big group and there are fallen trees which have dried out. And when you step on those trees, the leaves, when you step on those leaves, they make noise. So your location, there are chances it can be given out. Although all the precautions are taken, all types of SOPs are followed, all types of drills of fire control and the way you move are followed. Still, there is a chance when you have walked up the hill for 7 hours that your location might have been given out by sheer movement. And that is when the terrorist opened with the first burst, which unfortunately got our command elements. It was just not our day that day. But otherwise, Indian Army officers have been leading from front for last 35 years of counter-terrorist operation. I, as a youngster, have done it. So then, now coming to the point, could the target area or the hideout or the terrorist hiding place could have been engaged with some other weapon system before we physically contacted and got the casualties? Again, a very genuine concern. But again, bringing back to the way the information comes. If the information is in lat long, the GPS drop in, then yes, we can use a precision weapon. We can use a weapon which can drop the projectile or the explosives or the ordnance on that position and neutralize the terrorist. Since the location is not pinpointed, you have to physically go and check and confirm the presence of terrorists who may have shifted the hideout or they may have been in the same place where this source had seen them last time. So once the location is fixed, now imagine within that location, because the visibility in this jungle is so low, there are primary forests, there are secondary forests, and there are tertiary forests. Visibility of line of sight, because of sheer undergrowth, at times is less than 5 meters. You can miss a man walking in front of you if you're not careful. In addition to that, this is the terrain conditions. Then the weather conditions. There may be a fog, there may be clouds, there may be rains, and that further accentuates the problem of lack of visibility. And then there are operational complexities. On the ground, you are moving, you have your team moving to the left, you have a team moving to the right, you have an inner cordon, you have the outer cordon. Now, you may be able to see the target area, but there may be a weapon system which you want to fire. But the weapon systems spread at the target area because of inherent characteristics of the weapon system, something called danger area. The danger area is 150 meters, but your own troops are at 50 meters from the target area. So you cannot, in spite of that weapon system being available to you, having fixed the location of the target, you cannot use a particular weapon system because of inherent characteristics of that weapon system. That weapon system will be harming our own troops who are more in number. There may be 2, 3, 4, 5 terrorists, but own troops may be 50, 100 who are within the danger area of that weapon system. Hence, the officer or the commander carrying out that operation knows the terrain, knows the weather, knows the target profile. The target profile, when I say, the target may be in an open patch, which is very rare. Target may be inside a nala. Target may be on the slope of a re-entrant. Target may be under a rock face. target may be under a clump of trees. Now, depending on the target profile and the available weapon systems, which is most suitable to engage that profile target, is the decision of the commander on ground. I'll just give an example. There may be a major or a captain with 5 years or 8 years service. I, with a corps commander, as a corps commander with 38 years of service, with 15 years of experience in counter-terrorism, cannot tell that youngster which weapon system to use. I can only make available the various weapon systems. It is his decision because he knows the ground, he knows the weather at that place, and he knows the target profile. He is the best judge to select the weapon system out of the available weapons available at that place and use it on the target profile. Like in Kokernag, after loss of initial officers, the weapon system which I used was drone dropping the grenades. Because grenade, when it falls on ground, it is an impact burst projectile. So the grenade's danger area is 9 to 10 meters. That means on troops were within the vicinity of the target. I'm assuming that that's why the higher weapon system was not used, in spite of having identified the location of the terrorist. If one commanding officer and the other 2 officers got hit in the first burst, that means they're very close to the target. Hence, you may have the finest of the weapon systems, but you cannot use it because the target profile, vicinity of one troops, and the characteristics or limitations of that particular weapon system does not allow that weapon system to be used. Just to give an example, there are n number of weapon systems in an infantry battalion. All the weapon systems are never carried in all the operations. Whenever an operation is launched, there's something called appreciation. Then you work out how the target is, what the target is, how many enemies or terrorists are likely to be there, what is the protection, overhead protection, side protection they have, what is the weapon system they are likely to have, does it have overhead cover or not, is the flight path of the projectile, if it is an indirect firing weapon, clear or not, is the target behind a crest or not. So there are n number of things which are considered before selecting the most suitable weapon system for that target. You know, I have all the weapon systems. I have howitzers, I have artillery guns, I have tanks, I have machine guns, I have rifles, I have drones, I have precision-guided munitions, I have hepters, attack hepters. But that does not mean all these can be used on all the targets. Hence, the commander on ground who is in contact with the terrorist, and here I'm not talking of the conventional operations, who is in contact with the terrorist is the right person to select the weapon system and engage the terrorist. I never interfered with the commander on ground. I always asked his next senior, that is maybe a commanding officer or the brigade commander, as to what additional support you need from the corps headquarters or the sector headquarters. Because my job was to provide that support to facilitate the operations and make them easier for the commander who are in contact. So these are few aspects which need to be understood. Somebody asked me the other day, why can't we have, after these casualties of Kokernag, why can't we have sensors kept in the jungles? And whenever we see some movement or hear some movement, we go and hit instead of physically walking those areas. So my simple reply to that was, the forest cover in Jammu and Kashmir, as per the official website, is more than 22,000 square kilometers. In which all areas can we keep the sensors? And then sensors are of different types. The sensors who sense the movement, the sensors who sense the sound, and the sensors who sense other aspects like urine, sweat, and other things. Now, if you put the sensor who sense the movement, there's so many wild animals moving in the jungles. You'll get so many false alerts. Yes, we use the sensor at the places where we have the maximum chances of terrorist movement.
I was about to mention it. I think I spotted it in one of the posters posted by a terrorist group saying, look, here's a CC. They called it a CCTV, which it was not. Yeah. And they're like, beware of this. And I was just glad to spot it that our forces are using, and kudos to them.
I have used it as a sector commander in North Kashmir in Hindwara. We have used the sensors, we have used the LOROSys very effectively, but we used it on the tracks where we know the terrorists are frequenting. And second point about any sensor or any weapon system is the sensor or weapon system is of no use unless you can use it effectively to neutralize the objective target. Now, if the sensor is there, sensor has given you a warning, you've seen it on your screen, okay, there is a moment, and if you are not within the vicinity of the sensor or not in a position to engage at that moment in real time, it's of no use. So every sensor has to be backed by physical capabilities to neutralize moment the sensor picks up something. So all these are the issues which have to be understood, and I grant it to our citizens, our Indian friends who have concern for the lives of soldiers. We grant it to them. But we also would like to tell them that for more than 35 years in Kashmir, before that Punjab and Northeast, if the Indian Army has been living these ethos of leading from the front and keeping the terrorist and insurgency and terrorism in check, and to a great extent successful in wiping it off, please have faith. Now, again, the point of the officers leading from the front. One is the ethos of Indian Army, the DNA of Indian Army, the culture of Indian Army, the training of Indian Army. The second, which I learned as a senior officer, although my Subedar Major Nandaram Saab had told me as a second lieutenant, कि साहब officer हमेशा आगे. I took it as a gospel truth, and I kept feeling it is basically for the morale of the soldiers, to show your small bravado and to make sure the soldier feels his officer is leading and he is there with him. Unlike some armies in our neighborhood whose officers are never seen on the post. And you see, they have never won a war. They had 93,000 surrenders in Bangladesh. They lost Kargil. So if the officers are not leading, the hashar yahi hoga. And why officer leading is more important than the small morale and the bravado? Because officer, before launching the operation, has all the inputs. He has the maximum intelligence about the target profile, the likelihood what we are going to get there, as also which are the directions target can move or run. And he also has the location of his troops, the neighboring troops, the left and right formations. He also keeps getting updates while he is moving towards the target, from the higher headquarters, from other sources which would have been tasked to pick up the target. So he is most informed person about the target at any one time, starting from before the launch of operation till the finishing of operation. And if he is not at the point of decision right in the front, if he cannot see the terrain as I explained earlier, if he is not aware of the complexities of weather, if he is not aware about the visibility, the forest cover, the line of fire, the flight path, if he is not aware about the target profile on ground, he cannot take a decision to modify the plan or to delay the plan or hasten up the plan. He will not be in a position to say which party to launch first, which party to launch next. That is the reason the officer leading from the front, who has all the intelligence all the times and is always updated, is the right person to take a decision on ground. To be the right person to take the decision on ground, he has to be there on ground and right in front. So, officer leading from the front, I have again mentioned in my book, Kitne Ghazi Aaye, Kitne Ghazi Gaye, under a sub-chapter heading, why Indian Army officers always lead from the front. Just to give an example again of Pinglana operation after Pulwama, where we killed this Ghazi character, Brigadier Harbir Singh, the commander or sector commander of that area, was on leave. He was at his house. He cut short his leave the moment he came to know the operation has started. He cut short his leave, flew back to Srinagar, from the airport, drove straight to the operational site where the operation was going on. He, along with the DIG of Jammu Kashmir Police, Amit Kumar, led the operation from front, and they both got injured. That does not mean they were doing a wrong thing. That only means they were in control of the operation. In spite of initial casualties, the operation was successful, and security forces were successful in eliminating that module which had carried out Pulwama in less than 100 hours. And that is how the morale of the country came back. So these are the few things which need to be understood in the right perspective of carrying out operations. Without going into the details of weapon systems, details of operations, details of other aspects of the way we carry out our modus operandi of Indian security forces operational details, I just thought I would clarify these things with you because you asked me this question, why so many casualties? See, in this game, the casualties will happen. Like I said, first burst will come on to you. In spite of your best efforts, unfortunate part of this game is the casualties will happen. In spite of taking all the precautions, some casualties, some bad day will happen. That does not mean we stop carrying out the operation. That does not mean in future Indian Army officers will not lead from the front. That does not mean we sit back and give the moral ascendancy to the terrorist. Never ever will that happen. Indian Army officers are born to lead from the front. They will continue to lead from the front, come what may. And one more thing which I want to tell the viewers is, now with the number of terrorists reducing in Kashmir Valley, as also the terrorists not able to come to the villages because the villages have seen the economic development, they have seen the economic growth. They do not want terrorists to come to the villages. Earlier, they used to come to the villages for their sustenance, for food. Even they used to have the hideouts also inside the houses. Like all these people like Burhan Wani and Zakir Musa and all, they got killed hiding inside the houses. Zakir Musa was hiding inside a grain bowl, in a grain drum. So these are the issues which were there earlier. Today, no civilian, no Kashmiri wants a terrorist in his house or in his village, because he is tasting the fruits of peace, the dividends of peace which is there after 5th of August 2019. Now they have moved on to the higher jungles, like what happened in Kokarnar. So earlier the information used to come of the villages or the built-up area. Now we have to do something called seek and destroy operations or search and destroy operation. At times you have a generic idea or you have a generic information. At times you have a very good intelligence, something like what happened in Kokarnar. So whenever you have a generic idea or generic information about presence of terrorists in a particular area inside a particular jungle, so operations are launched which are called search and destroy and seek and destroy. So this Kokarnak operation is not the first time it was launched. As a sector commander in Handwara in 2010 to 12, I have written in my book, we used to launch something called swarming operations. They were also seek and destroy operations. Swarming operations where anything up to 1,200 troops used to be in the jungle for 50 days, 50 days. And we used to come down after 50 days with 17 kills, 18 kills. So this search and destroy and seek and destroy operations are part of the Indian Army's modus operandi. And now they have become more relevant because terrorists have stopped coming to the villages for their own sustenance, for their own survival. Now they are in the self-preservation mode. They don't want to come to the village and get caught there. That's why they are hiding in the jungles. So Indian Army or the security forces are carrying out operations in the jungles, which are termed as search and destroy or seek and destroy operation. And one very good thing which is happening is what we saw in Kokarnak also, synergy between the security forces. That is Army, that is Rashtriya Rifles, Jammu Kashmir Police, CRPF, intelligence agency is tremendous. And this synergy of operations is what brings the results. So it's very heartening to see, since I'm in touch with a lot of people on the ground, a lot of security forces, personnel and officers on the ground. And I think that is one good thing which is continuing. And I wish all the security forces personnel all the very best in all the future operations. Thank you and Jai Hind.